Hey, stop. You clicked on this video. You're here for a reason. Don't keep on scrolling. Stick around to find out what it was. I've been a pastor since 1999, and increasingly I'm becoming more and more uncomfortably aware that Christianity as a whole, and my church perhaps more so, has missed it. And so churches today, and you may be one of these people who goes to church, but you're not sure why, you feel something is off, something is missing, something is not right. Or you may have stopped going for all of those reasons and more, but you're restless. You know there's more. You know there's something, and you want it, but you can't figure out what it is. Religion has primarily wasted its time trying to prove to others that they're right about this and right about that, or defending what they already believe, instead of lifting up the one who we're supposed to believe. Jesus said when he was here, "If I am lifted up, I will draw all people to myself." When you think about Jesus, if you spent any time reading about him, he didn't carry around a massive copy of the Old Testament, reading from it profusely, proving to people that he was right about this and right about that, or revealing where he was seen here and where he was seen there. Primarily, Jesus lived a story and he told stories. And I'm going to tell you a story today that's well known to illustrate how far we've missed the mark. So the story is called The Prodigal Son. We made that name. It's not even about the son that we tell the story about. He's a key part of the story, but not for the reason that you think. You see, on that particular day, Jesus had been eating with prostitutes and tax collectors and sinners, bad people. And the church people, the good people, came along and they were offended and upset, jealous, envious, and they murmured and complained. And in response to their murmuring and complaining, Jesus told 3 stories in rapid succession. The first story was about a lost sheep. The second story was about a lost coin. The third story was about a father and 2 sons. Now, the sheep was 1 out of 100, and how it got lost or where it got lost, we're not told. Sheep aren't the brightest of animals, it's well known. They're dependent on following the rest of the sheep and following the shepherd, and for some reason this sheep wandered away. Now, it probably didn't know it was lost at first, but eventually it would have looked up and looked around and realized, I'm alone, and there's no one around to help me. And it would have started bleeding and crying. The shepherd, though, he knew. He got back and he counted and he realized, I'm missing one. 1 out of 100. Big deal. A bunch more will be born every spring. Who cares? He cared. So he safely locked up the 99 and he went in search of the one until he found it. And then Jesus says there was great rejoicing. And then there's a story of a woman who had 10 coins. Now, women at that time couldn't own property, were in a culture that was completely patriarchal. They were dependent on men for survival financially and economically. But she had 10 coins. How she got them, where she got them, we don't know. But she lost one. 10% of everything she had economically was gone. And she searched her house diligently. And if you know the houses back then, pretty dark. But she took a lamp, and they weren't very powerful. And she carefully went around searching, and she found it. And again, Jesus said there was great rejoicing. Coin didn't know it was lost. Coins don't know anything. And then Jesus told a story of a father and 2 sons. And the younger son is the one we know about. He's the one who said, Dad, I think I'd like to cut the check for my inheritance early so I can go off, move away, and do my own thing. And you can imagine as a father, if you are one, how painful that would have been to have that request made of you. But he cut the check, and he let him go. And we know the story. He ran off, and it says he wasted his means on prodigal living, whatever that means. I can surmise and guess. Other people have surmised and guessed. It doesn't mean we're right or wrong. But eventually the money ran out. There was a huge famine, and he was broke. Ended up a Jewish boy feeding pigs, which was not only forbidden, but wildly humiliating. And he was so bad off, he was jealous of the fact that pigs had more to eat than he did. And then it says he came to his senses. And he remembered his father. He remembered how good his father was. He remembered how well his father treated his servants. And he concocted this plan. I'm going to go home and I'm going to ask for my father to hire me as a servant. I'll be better off in my father's house as a servant than I will be out here with a life of misery that I've made for myself. So he prepared his speech and he headed for home. And Jesus says the father saw him a long way off. Of course he did. Our Father's eye never leaves us. Anyway, the son comes and the father runs, which in that culture men of respect, you just didn't do that. This wasn't a thing. He ran. He fell on his neck. He kissed him. He told his servant to bring a robe for him and put the sandals and put the family ring on his finger. And the son began to make his speech. The father didn't even listen to the speech. My son is lost. He's found. We're going to celebrate. Told him to go get a fatted calf to start a party to rejoice that his son was home. And most of the time when we tell the story of the prodigal son, we end the story there. We haven't even gotten to the point of the story yet. This is only a lead up. So the party starts and everything's going well. The other son, who stayed home faithfully, he's out in the field. The Bible, Jesus says in the story, slaving away. And he comes in late in the evening and he hears the sound of partying, and it's an unfamiliar sound to him. Almost an offensive sound to him. We don't do that around here. And he summons a servant to go find out what the deal is. When the father finds out that his son, who's been home with him all along, won't come to the party, he leaves the party and goes after his boy. You see, now we're getting to the point of the story. It's not the son who ran away and came home who's the focus of the story. It's the son who was home the whole time, but missed it. Didn't know what love was, didn't know what family was, didn't know what loyalty was, didn't know what caring for his brother was about. He was just slaving away to gain an inheritance. And Christianity, for too much of it, has become, on one side, a group of people slaving away to gain an inheritance. Don't know the Savior, don't care about their fellow man, don't know what it is to rejoice and celebrate. They've missed it. You see, Jesus was confronted with two groups of people that day. The sinners and the good people. And the good people were complaining about the sinners, that Jesus, if he was a real God and a real Savior and a real Messiah, he wouldn't be with those people. But he was precisely with those people because they were every much his children. And no one else was going to go after them. Nobody else was going to reach out to them. So he did. And they hated him for it. In the end, they killed him for it. The church killed their own Messiah. And it seems to me every time I go to meetings where the higher ups go over the statistics of how many people we've gained and how many we've lost, there's always this lamenting over how many of our own we've lost, how many of our own sons have gone to the far country. And we tend to excuse ourselves by blaming the ones who have left, when I think the real problem is the ones who are slaving away, who have misrepresented God and made the church a place where thinking and caring and empathetic people don't want to be. If you've gotten this far, I've created this channel for one very specific reason. I firmly believe that if Jesus was lifted up and presented for who he really is, he would be so attractive that people would be flooding to hear about him. There are three things that have formed your picture of God. One is the family/church you grew up in. One is your own personality. And the third is the smattering of information you've heard from church, from Bible, from culture. So the own bubble you grew up in is one thing, your own personality is another thing, and the voices from outside are another. But I want to challenge you. And if you do it through this YouTube channel, great. You don't have to, you can do it. But pursue finding out who Jesus actually is. You may not find that in the church. You might. And I would encourage, that's the best place, because God designed for us to worship, to be together, to support each other. But wherever you have to look, do not rest. Jesus said, if you will search for me, and you will find me if you search with all your heart. So keep on searching. He is worth it. We'll see you next time.